Well, welcome everyone. I
Hello.
am here with Max,
Hi.
and we're talking about a very interesting topic. And I'm just going to real quick check actually to see if this is on my Facebook page, because last time we did this, it didn't work. So I just want to make sure that it's showing up.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, it's working. Excellent.
Cool.
So, this topic, I was actually inspired to do this because um, I am noticing a lot of Christians and their ideas about the new age. I put it in quotation marks for a reason. And I am also noticing experiences that Christians have when they begin to wake up and go into a more awakened, enlightened state, and the things that freak them out, and then they run back to their old beliefs instead of confronting and addressing and integrating those experiences they have in their awakening. So specifically, talking about people who begin to wake up and have experiences with demons or physical illness. I'm sure there are a lot more examples. Those are two big ones that I see a lot of. And I can speak to this because coming from a Christian background, that's how I was raised, I had a very different experience. For me, moving into my evolution and along my spiritual journey was very expansive, very freeing. So I'll just share a little bit about my experience so you understand. I had chronic fatigue syndrome, and I had a spontaneous healing and awakening experience. Now, I had very deep support to go through that experience, which I think a lot of Christians maybe waking up now don't have that support. They don't necessarily understand what's going on, what's happening. So to have the support that I had was a blessing, and I'm so grateful for it, and gave me a perspective and understanding of what was going on. I did face my demons. I confronted my shadow. I dealt with the stuff that I was there. Again, I had deep support to do that. And so for me, when I had those experiences, yes, it was very scary, but it wasn't something that made me want to, turn around and go back to my old beliefs, because to do that would have been, would have undone all this work that I did on my spiritual path. And so, it gave me a very deep understanding of what was going on, because I had a mentor, because I had the deep support to look at my shadow. And also, I want to talk a little bit about this term that we use, New Age. Okay, so while we may be on this planet moving into a golden age, or an experience we've never had before on this planet, and so we might call it the New Age, what we're working with in the New Age community, many people, I can't speak for everyone, is we're working with ancient wisdom. So the term New Age is a little bit of a contradiction of what's actually happening. Because when we're awakening, we're remembering more of who we are, past lives, parallel lives, whatever. We're remembering more of that ancient wisdom that we have in our cellular memory. We have that within our DNA. And so it's not new. And so the term New Age is a little bit misleading. And I actually have a little bit of a hard time hearing Christians say the word New Age and the way they judge it, because they're not necessarily understanding actually what the New Age really is. Would you like to speak to that?
Oh, well, I think part of why it's termed in that way is because there's, I guess a breaking down of an old pattern, right? So it is a new phase of expression of beliefs and spirituality. And so in that way, the New Age sort of makes sense, but in another way, it is sort of connecting more with a holistic approach to spirituality rather than these individual structures of religion and cults and different cultures. And so I think because New Age sort of terms it as a chronological event rather than this internal integration and wholeness, it is sort of a misnomer. It's not properly termed to what it's actually representing. So.
I hear the word occult being thrown around a lot as something negative, as something to judge as evil from the Christian perspective. Can you speak to that?
Well, I think part of it is fear of the unknown for a lot of them. I mean, that's sort of the compassion that you have. And there's also people that misuse occult practices, right?
Yes.
And so, obviously there's been a lot of pattern in history with human sacrifices, animal sacrifices, torture and rape, along with ceremony that is very convoluted with a lot of... So there is a lot of history around the terminology and the ideas that these practices are, identified with all these different negative actions from past experiences. And sometimes it's past life patterning with these people that they feel so much like they want to reject any idea of that because they've seen how it can be misused and how, and so there's a reason why people feel what they feel, and so to have compassion for, I guess, that perspective. But the other side of it is that there is, because a cult is sort of like the idea that it's what is this, like esoteric, it's mysterious, there's it's that, and moving from that into a much more transparent experience of these ideas. And
I think that's the difference now as we move more into fifth dimensional frequency, as we move into transparency, that the mystery of some of this will take away some of the judgment and the sting, perhaps, because we are moving into a time where we need to be more transparent. And if you've been with me for any period of time, you see how vulnerable I am with you guys. You see how transparent I am, because we're moving into a time where nothing is hidden. And actually, that's probably why a lot of people are awakening right now, because we're moving into those frequencies where we can't hide. We can't hide our light. We can't hide our shadow. And it's really important to understand that what happened in the past with occult practices, with misuse of our wisdom, with misuse of the energies, that won't be sustainable now. Anything, like witchcraft or whatever, whatever the practices were, we can't misuse those practices. And a lot of us have in past lifetimes. Well, we all have. We've all misused. We've all misused power. We've all misused the magic, the wisdom, whatever it is. And I think perhaps that some Christians have fear around that because it's in their DNA. It's in their cellular memory. They remember how they've misused. They remember how it's been misused against them at the cellular level. And that's probably where a lot of the fear comes from.
Yeah, and I guess that's sort of the pattern around power in general, and why a big focus within religions is to give away your power, right? Because we
can't be trusted with it.
Right, because they've had fearful experiences with power, destructive experiences with power, and so they turn to that idea of giving away your power so that it won't be misused, right? So
we'll entrust it to someone who knows how to use it properly.
Right, and so in a way,
how well that works out.
In a way, what it's doing is it's disempowering and constricting individuals because they're literally diffusing or pushing away their power. And then individuals that don't take advantage of them. And so it's just a pattern and structure that's only compounded the issue. And yes, people do have expanded experiences in the intention of connecting with, the creator and calling upon for assistance. There are positive, expansive energies that can assist you, but when it's in the narrative and construct of religion, there is a convolution of judgment about the interpretation being one way or another. And so that then convolutes sort of the whole purpose of the spiritual engagement of, acceptance, unconditional love, expansion,
That's the irony.
empowerment, like all these things that serve to assist life and yourself and the collective. Like, it serves to constrict that, even though it's purporting to connect with those energies. It then convolutes it with that narrative.
Oh, the irony.
Yeah, and so that's sort of the structure of it.
To be clear, our Max and I are not picking on Christianity. This happens across all religions. I use Christianity because that's my background and how I grew up, and that's what I understand. So, we're not picking on it. We're not here to judge it. The purpose of this is to understand what happens when you begin to wake up from a religion, and when you begin to have these experiences of demons or physical illness. What's happening is the light of your awakening is coming in. So it's shining on your light, it's shining on your shadow. So for example, if you are beginning to wake up and you have all of this sickness in your physical body, or your emotional body, or your mental body, it's not that the New Age brought that on. That was always there. With this new influx of light that you've allowed in to your being, you're now seeing that stuff. You're now feeling it. You're now experiencing it, because it doesn't want to be a part of you. It wants to, be released from your being. And in order for that to happen, most times how the process goes is you see it, experience it, feel it, and then release it. And so what I've seen is a lot of Christians who have been waking up and then having these experiences, they don't have the proper support to deal with this part of the journey. They don't know how to integrate these energies they're experiencing. They don't know how to properly release and transmute. And so they're experiencing physical illness. They're experiencing heavy, dark dreams. They're experiencing the demons and having all of these, scary, legitimately scary experiences and feeling perhaps like things have gotten out of control and it's because of the New Age. When in fact what's happening is the light is coming in and shining on their shadow and revealing all of this stuff that's been hidden. Now it's coming to the surface for them to deal with. And so, if you are someone who's in that position, I want you to know that Max and I are very safe people to talk with about this stuff, because we're not going to judge you. We're going to share with you what's actually in truth happening for you so that you can work through it and navigate it and don't have to go back to a constricted state. And I've actually watched some of these videos of Christians sharing their testimony of how they left the New Age or whatever. And a majority of them, they have a very fearful body language. Like you can see how we're sitting right now and it's open and, and it's very interesting just to observe. And again, no judgment, but just interesting to observe what they're experiencing. And they're sharing how they, freed themselves from the New Age or whatever, and they got out and they're back with Jesus and everything's good. And yet their body language is very constricted. And so I just find it interesting. And again, as someone who has come out of that upbringing of Christianity and the judgment that I experienced, the physical illness that I experienced, the spiritual oppression that I experienced, and now where I am now in my life and the freedom that I experience and the joy and the expansion, And it's just such an interesting contrast. But again, I had the support to go through that process to get to where I am now.
Mm-hmm.
Why are you laughing?
Oh, it's
just
smiling.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so yes, you can have experiences come up with, you know, entities influencing and disrupting and causing discomfort, and
I had those.
And and so again, if there is energy in your body that they can reside within, then they can influence you within your field, within your body, within your being. And so to clear those things and not give those energies and entities space to then be interacting in that way with you.
This is a really important topic, actually. I'm really glad you brought this up, because this, you know, basically we're talking about the law of attraction and resonance. If you have something within your shadow self that resonates to something external, that external thing can make that connection with you because it's there within your being. So, for example, the demon experience. And I had this, so I can speak from experience. At the time, the level of density that I had within myself, it allowed a connection with that external demon entity, or, you know, however you want to label it, to come and make that connection with me, and to, you know, have that experience where it was in my body, right? So
then you had marks.
I had marks on my body, the whole thing.
Yeah.
I don't know how much detail I want to go into.
Well,
but
I mean,
it's real. It happens. Yeah.
And so these things do happen.
Yeah, these things absolutely do happen. But as I've been on this journey of clearing and transmuting the density from my being, there is less and less for those external entities to attach to within me. And so that's when I talk about integration of these energies, that's what I'm talking about. To free yourself, to clear yourself from those denser vibrations, those denser energies, so that what you are attracting and experiencing in your external is a reflection of what, you know, the clarity that you have internally. So that's very real. When Christians have these awakening experiences and they start to experience the demons and the darker energies, that's very real. And again, it's because the light is coming in and shining on that shadow that they have within them. Yeah.
And experiences may still come up, like after you've cleared stuff, and you'll find that it's just, you're like, well, you just observe it and you just let it pass by. Like it's a very different engagement with it. It's a very different interpretation. It's a very different energy.
That's easy for you to say, not being in the fear of it.
Right, but I'm saying if it comes up after you've already worked through it, right? Okay. So it still can come up, but it's very much just passing, right? And so you can just observe these things, and you can have compassion for what people are expressing, what they're going through, and if you don't feel like assisting them or engaging with them, you just say, well, I hope that you work through this and that it turns out fine, and you just follow what you're inspired to do in your life. And so it's a very different, it's not saying that you're immune to these things. It's saying that you have mastery over navigating these things, and that you can work through it at some level. You can work through it almost instantly, right? And so getting to that mastery is not about being immune to these things. It's about having the ability to navigate these things super efficiently and to be free of them because of that.
Yeah. And to be clear, we're not saying that Christianity is a wrong path, or that Buddhism is a wrong path, or any of these religions. Like, for some people, this is their path this time around. This is what they've chosen to master. This is, this is where they're at, and this is where they're meant to be right now. And specifically talking about those who are ready for the next step in their spiritual journey, when they are awakening out of the religion matrix. Yeah. So I just wanted to make that clear, because I have no judgment about Christians or Buddhists or, any of that. What I find is interesting is all the judgments they have about people like me. When it's supposed to be all about love. But, that's just how it is.
Well, and you understand why they have those.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to have compassion.
I was one of the most judgmental people you would have ever met. Absolutely. I own it. I was there.
Yeah. To have compassion for where they're at and
Yeah.
what they're experiencing, what their view of life is, like, you know. And so you offer them compassion and love, assistance and guidance if you feel inspired, and you just allow them to be on their journey. There's a lot of allowing in a lot, like the idea of having to assist someone or having to save someone is also another pattern of religion. And so as you exit that, you'll find that letting people go through these things on their own doesn't force or project or pattern onto others. It's allowing them to organically work through these things and to actually be complete with these things rather than suppressing things or sweeping it under the rug because of these ideas they've been served by someone else. So again, and that's why we talk about assisting you to do the inner work, not doing inner work for you.
And we are coming to that point on this planet where there is so much love and light energy pouring onto this planet that very quickly we won't be able to sweep things under the rug. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I found this for myself. Like, if something comes up, I got to deal with it right then and there. It's not a thing anymore to like, well, I'll talk about it tomorrow. Like, no, you got to deal with it now.
Instead of, so some people say thinning of the veil, you could say thinning of the rug.
Yeah.
There's less and less for it to hide under.
Yeah. And I do have a lot of compassion for those awakening out of the religion matrix, because if they have been taught this whole time that the New Age, again I use the quotation marks, if they have been taught that this is of the devil, this is, you know, this is horrible, this is wrong, this is sin, where are they to go? What are they to do? You know, awakening out of that mindset and that teaching, well, what else is there? And so to strip away all the labels, this isn't about the New Age. This isn't about the ancient wisdom, although it really is. But to strip away the labels, this is about love. This is about unity. And religion does a very good job of actually creating separation. Even though they're talking about love, there's a lot of separation within the religion matrix. And so...
Did you want to talk about that?
Okay.
So this is sort of my external view of what people have shared, from people being Christians to then transitioning to non-religious or New Age or however. So I haven't read the Bible or anything, but just from a general observation of what people convey is that there's position good and evil, right? Within the religion, there's the God, which is good, and Lucifer, which is evil within Christianity. And that, you know, light has to defeat darkness, and darkness resists and manipulates and deceives and all this stuff. However, the piece about judgment is positioned on the side of the light, which is ironic because everything about judgment is about saying someone's worth more or worth less, right? And so instead of accepting all as equal and accepting all in love, you're actually doing the opposite, but it's positioned as that it's not. So
a lot of irony in religion.
Right. So there is a qualitative deception within the structure of that religious idea itself. And so in a way that's part of why, you know, people associate with the idea that what they're doing is right and what others are doing is wrong because of that structure, that their judgment is correct, and so therefore their judgment is good, which good and evil itself is the concept of judgment, which is the whole structure of the thing is judgment. So it's,
see the layers of convolution,
right?
Go round and round.
Right. So that's sort of the crux of how the convolution starts to twist a person from oh, I had this expansive experience with, angels or Jesus or God, and that's great. I feel love. But then it starts to twist into, oh, well, my interpretation's correct. You're wrong. I have to then engage with these, these feelings of anger and hate. How'd you get there from being in love? Like, what happened in between? And it's that structure of judgment that's subtly imprinted throughout a lot of different religions. Yeah.
It's imprinted throughout all religions.
Okay. Well, and that's, in a way, it's
part
the
of the
same,
God matrix.
Right? But it's the same pattern within politics. It's the same pattern within governments.
Yeah.
This country's right, this country's wrong. With racism, with sexism, with
money system.
Yeah.
Some people have lots. Some people have nothing.
Right, and it's this one against the other, judging that they are no longer equal. One is above, one is below, one is greater, one is lesser. One has the right to good things. One has the right to punishment, or what. So it's all based on this pattern of judgment, and throughout all these different systems.
Who's in control of all of that? God.
Well, no, it's individuals, because
but this is the God matrix. This is how it's set up to have us believe that that God is orchestrating all of this,
right? And
God gets to judge.
Yeah, and we could even go into the individual that people have shared about, which is the individual Yahweh, and how Yahweh draws energy on people that engage in judgment because of how it's structured, as Yahweh is this negative character or this positive character, depending on your view and interpretation of it. But he's actually positioned as two different characters. He's positioned as Lucifer character and the God of judgment. But he's not, he's associated by name as the God of creation, but his qualities aren't actually himself as a being. So he kind of uses the energy of creation as a backlighting for his character. And so people have this engagement and association with this being, and they send him energy, not realizing that that's not actually, that's why there's a delineation between connecting with source and then connecting with this being, this divine being.
And remember, we're in a polarity universe, and if God is the God of this universe, this God has polarity, as you mentioned, the devil and the light. So, once you really start to see some of this stuff, it's very interesting how quickly the religion matrix can fall apart. It can't sustain itself. I don't know how much longer it's going to last on this planet, but it can't sustain itself because it's so full of untruths. And, it's very interesting that I'm saying this because I grew up with this, and no disrespect to my family.
There are nuggets of truth, but
there are nuggets of truth.
You have to really
read through it, and that's why it's so deceptive, because there is so much truth to it that the part of us that knows truth resonates with that truth, and then we get sucked in with the part that's not true. So the God matrix is an interesting conversation as well. Are you willing to share your dream that you had of the God character? Oh,
I suppose I could.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so I had this dream, and it was sort of, the setting was very, how'd I say it? Like, it's dark and dreary, and there's like a lot of weaving roads and landscapes going through the hillsides. And I get to this, at some point in the dream, I get to this valley, and there's like these forms, like overseers, looking over, like observing. And I think I talked to one of them, and they went off to get someone. And this individual comes back, and he introduces himself as God. And he's a gentry, slender old man, very, very...
What's gentry?
Well, maybe that's not the right word, but he's very spry, right? He has a lot of energy, a lot of vitality. And he's like, oh, I'm gonna take you up to heaven. And so I was like, oh. So I just observed, right? So I'm going along with this character, and he displays to me different things like stopping time and reversing time and, you know, walking through walls and all this stuff. And we go to like this, it is sort of like a circus like setup of like, you know, trailers and tents and stuff. And it's like his entourage, right? It's all these people celebrating, partying, having a good time, enjoying life. There's a big buffet, right? And they're just partying. It's like, oh, we're going to party before we go to heaven, right? You know, like this is just sort of like a celebration. And so I was like, oh, okay. So I think I either go off to take a nap in the dream or I come back later. And when I come back, it's the morning and everyone's asleep and this God character is still eating. He's been eating all night, right? And then he does this thing where he instantly rejuvenates all his vitality and energy. Like he shifts into another body that looks exactly the same. And so he's like, all right, well, we're just going to party a little more. And then we'll, you know, so he keeps sort of feeding in this party mode of sort of the, I guess what you would say, the pleasures of the flesh or, you know, engaging in whatever energy or physical external enjoyment of, you know.
It's fun to be human.
Right.
That's the benefit of being human.
And
you get to eat food.
And so I just was observing him, and then I got this flicker of what he wasn't displaying, right, of what he wasn't expressing. And it was, you know, a lot of satanic rituals and darkness and density. And, you know, so that's sort of the other side of his character, right? So it's his being split into two characters. One very, you know, jovial and celebrate and enjoy, and the other one, there's a lot more darkness and control and constriction and suppression and discomfort and that sort of stuff. And so I just observed him, and I just said, you know, this character would represent himself as God. And I said, well, may you find love. And I just turned and walked away, you know, because I had that understanding and perception, even though he displayed all those things that would be interpreted as impressive or positive within a certain context. It was a limited sort of expression of that, and there was convolution with it that I was able to observe with this, you know,
I love
individual.
that you sent God love. I love that part. That's my favorite part.
Well, I said, may you find love.
May you find love.
For himself.
Love.
Yeah. And so to realize what the full expression of that is.
Yeah.
And, you know, that gets into like, you know, again, what I've shared, the concept of divinity, where it's, you know, the three main parts of divinity.
Oh, so, your power pyramid.
Yeah. Well, no, it's
divinity pyramid.
Divinity pyramid. So there's love, wisdom, and power. That's the
love
three
parts.
Love
is the foundation.
Love is the foundation. Wisdom is the center.
Power is the capstone.
And then power is the capstone. And so within the symbology on the dollar bill, you see that the capstone is separated. So it's the idea that you're separating power from love and wisdom. So that's
I'll post a picture of that
symbology in the pyramid of divinity. Yeah. So anything else you want to discuss within Christianity, religion?
I just want to extend an invitation if you are someone who is within Christianity or any other religion, I know Christianity best, and you have questions for us about these topics, you know, feel free to ask us. And if you want to send a private message instead of a public comment, that's totally fine too. You know, we're here to assist this awakening process. So we have no judgment about your choices or your path. You know, we applaud you for your choices in your spiritual path, whatever it is. If you have questions that you feel maybe we could answer for you, you know, send us your questions. Yeah. Well, thank you, Max, for joining me today for this Facebook Live.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me, for sharing me.
Yeah, Max has a lot of wisdom to share. And I think this is a very important topic of discussion because it's very real. You know, people who are waking up have these very real, very scary sometimes experiences.
Right, and that's
so
also
it's easier just to go back to what they know.
It's also the lack of clarity on what's happening, and so They just have their lens of reality and how they navigate with that.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing to understand is that if you are one of these people that we're describing having these awakening experiences and experiencing demons or physical illnesses or whatever it is, to understand that the light is shining on your shadow and it will bring these things to the surface for you to see and realize. And if you, at the soul level, are at the place where you're ready to see this stuff, you can't put it under the rug. You can't bury it. It's going to keep showing up in your life in one way or another. And we're kind of experts at looking at the shadow and confronting and dealing with the stuff that's there. So there are people who can support you in this process. And, you know, if you do want to turn back to Christianity and let you know, that's fine too. That's your choice. But if you really want to confront what's coming up to the surface for you, there are people who can support you through that. So lots of love to you all.
I was going to say, part of this conversation is, in a way, it's kind of disclosure, talking about in the open, not like avoiding the conversation of spirituality and religion, because people have spiritual experiences whether or not they're in religion.
Yes.
And to make that more open and acceptable to talk about.
Yes.
Like, that's part of the transparency.
Yeah.
And being a whole being, an individual.
Yeah.
So just want to put that
awesome.
out.
Beautiful. Yeah. And we love to talk about the stuff that no one else wants to talk about. So bring it. Love you guys. Mwah. Just saying.